My name is Talia Monroe, and I was 24 the day my parents finally looked at me like I was someone worth noticing. It happened during graduation, when thousands of families packed into the grand auditorium at Kinsley University, and my name echoed from the stage. Not Juliet's, mine. They had dressed for her, of course. My mother in her garden party hat and floral Chanel knockoff, my father in the only suit he deemed worth dry cleaning. They were there to bask in the glory of the daughter they had chosen to invest in, the one they believed would make them proud. They never thought I'd be the one called up first to speak. They certainly didn't expect the next words either, the ones that made the audience go silent, then turn toward them. In that moment, they weren't proud. They were pale, frozen, exposed. And I, standing there in my modest heels, with a commencement stole embroidered by the only person who ever believed in me, felt nothing but clarity. They had decided 4 years ago that I wasn't worth the cost of a college education. They made that choice out loud, at dinner, in front of both their daughters. She's the better investment, they said. She deserves it. Now, on that stage, I didn't need revenge. I already had it, because I had earned everything myself, and today, the entire room was about to find out. I was born first. That fact should have meant something. But in our household, being the eldest only made you the warm-up act. Juliet came 2 years after me, golden-haired, dimpled, and adored from the moment she took her first breath. My parents called her our miracle baby, though nothing about her birth was especially miraculous. What was miraculous, I guess, was how quickly she became the center of everything. Growing up in our Ohio suburb, our house always looked like something out of a catalog. A neat lawn, tasteful curtains, holiday wreaths that changed with the seasons. But behind the matching family photos on the walls was a story no one ever talked about. I was the extra, the filler, the placeholder daughter until Juliet arrived and completed the picture. At 6, I unwrapped a puzzle set from the clearance rack, while Juliet got a singing Barbie with a working microphone. At 10, she got a birthday party with a magician and custom cake, while I had a pizza night with leftover streamers from last year. The justifications were always gentle, always polite. Juliet's at an age where she needs more encouragement, Mom would say. Or, "You're so mature for your age, Talia. You understand, don't you?" And I did. I understood perfectly. In middle school, I started competing in math tournaments and business club projects. Anything I could use to stand out. When I won second place in the state business simulation contest, I brought home the certificate like it was a golden ticket. My father skimmed it while glancing at Juliet's dance recital schedule. "Nice work," he said, not unkindly. "But don't forget, she has rehearsal Saturday." By high school, it became less about winning their attention and more about building something of my own. I started doing freelance logo design for local cafes and small businesses. I taught myself how to run online ads and manage social media accounts. I figured if no one was going to hand me a ladder, I'd build one myself. Juliet? She joined student council, got voted homecoming princess, and developed a flair for political science. She had a knack for saying the right thing in front of the right people. I had a knack for staying up until 3 a.m. fixing a client's website crash before school. When it came time for college applications, we both ended up eyeing Kinsley University, she for political science, me for digital marketing and entrepreneurship. It was a surprise when we both got in. A bigger surprise when we got the letters on the same day. I came home with trembling hands, barely able to open the envelope. When I read congratulations, I cried. All the hours, the freelance gigs, the isolation, it had paid off. I told my parents that night at dinner. "I got into Kinsley," I said, my voice shaking with joy. Dad looked up from his phone. "Oh, that's good news." Before I could even take another breath, the front door burst open, and Juliet came twirling in with her own envelope. "I got in too," she squealed. "Political science program. They called me personally." Suddenly, it was champagne and toasts, plans for campus visits, and gushing phone calls to relatives. No one remembered I had said it first, or at all. 2 weeks later, at dinner, my father cleared his throat and looked at Juliet like she was the only person in the room. "We've decided," he said, "to cover Juliet's tuition in full. We want her to focus entirely on school, no financial distractions." I waited. I waited for him to say something about me, to acknowledge that I too had gotten in, that I had just as much right to be supported. But nothing came. So I asked, quietly, "What about me?" He didn't blink. "Talia, we only have enough for one of you, and Juliet's always had more direction." My mother reached across the table as if to soften the blow. "You're independent, sweetheart. You'll find a way. You always do." Then came the words that would echo in my head for years. "She deserves it." And the unspoken, "You don't." I didn't cry that night, not in front of them. I cleared my plate, smiled thinly, and walked upstairs with the weight of a verdict just handed down. But behind the closed door, I broke. They had decided. My future wasn't worth investing in. So I did what I'd always done when they turned away. I started building without them. The next morning, while Juliet shopped for dorm room lights with Mom, I buried myself in scholarship applications. I wrote essay after essay between shifts at the grocery store, skipped lunches to finish FAFSA forms in the school library, and spent evenings researching student loans. With help from Miss Kessler, my counselor, and a work-study grant, I scraped together enough for my first year. Kinsley was going to happen, with or without them. While Juliet moved into a newly decorated dorm suite, I moved into a peeling 2-bedroom apartment 45 minutes from campus, shared with strangers and home to moldy grout and unreliable heat. They had movers and matching luggage. I had second-hand boxes and my own 2 hands. Mom offered me old twin sheets the night before I left. It was the closest she came to acknowledging I was leaving for college, too. I worked 2 jobs, library assistant and late-night waitress, and attended every business class I could fit. I learned how to do assignments while bussing tables, how to record lectures to listen while folding laundry. Some weeks I survived on oatmeal and dollar menu burgers. Every minute was scheduled, every dollar counted twice. Juliet posted selfies from study abroad fairs. I calculated if I could afford both textbooks and heat. But something strange happened in all that exhaustion. I started to excel. Years of managing my own finances gave me real-world insight most of my classmates didn't have. While others stumbled through balance sheets, I was already running mock campaigns for a real client. A bakery near campus I helped grow through social media. Word spread. Soon, I had more small businesses reaching out. And just like that, my freelance work became something bigger. Maven Strategies, a tiny digital marketing service I built from scratch between classes and cashier shifts. By sophomore year, I had 5 clients and steady income. I didn't just survive. I made rent on time. I started repaying small loan installments. I bought a second-hand laptop that didn't crash mid-presentation. No one at home asked. They didn't know I was building a business, let alone winning small grants and school recognition. They still thought of me as the one who figures things out somehow, the background daughter. But others noticed. My professor nominated me for the Langston Innovation Challenge, a national competition offering $50,000 to student-led ventures. She said, "Your business is small, but your strategy is world-class." I worked on my pitch deck at 2 a.m., practiced in empty classrooms, refined the numbers until they were bulletproof. That same week, Juliet's world cracked. She showed up at my door with red eyes and a USB stick. Her senior thesis had been rejected, methodology flawed, sources weak, deadline looming. For a second, I wanted to shut the door. But then I saw her face, really saw it, and something inside me softened. "Come in," I said. Juliet had never stepped foot in my apartment before. She stood on the front step, in her usual neat blazer, eyes tired, holding her laptop like it was a life preserver. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I'm failing," she said, "and I don't know how to fix it." For a second, I said nothing. The girl who had coasted through life with applause and advantage was finally drowning. And she'd come to me. I didn't gloat. I didn't remind her what it felt like to be overlooked. I just stepped back. "Come in," She sat at my kitchen table while I read through her thesis. It was all over the place. Weak research, no structure, citations a mess. I could tell she'd never had to struggle before, not like this. You need to start over, I said. You're missing a spine. Juliet didn't flinch. I know. We rebuilt it from the ground up. Structure, research design, argument flow. She listened without protest. That alone surprised me. Around night 3, she started noticing things. The sticky notes lining my walls, the spreadsheets tracking client campaigns, the bags under my eyes. You really built all this? She asked, gesturing to the screen where I was balancing project timelines. I had to. Her voice softened. Why didn't you ever tell me? I paused. Would you have believed me if I had? She didn't answer, but her silence said she wasn't sure. After that, she kept coming over, not just for help, but to observe, to understand. She asked about Maven, about how I got clients, how I managed time, how I'd never cracked under pressure. Mom and Dad never asked about this? She said once, brows furrowed. No, they assume I'm fine. She started speaking up in front of them. When Mom offered to sponsor a policy internship in Boston, Juliet declined. I think it's Talia's turn, she said. She's the one doing real work. They didn't argue, they just looked confused. Meanwhile, Maven was growing faster than I could have predicted. Professor Hensley pulled me aside one day after class and said, apply for the Langston Innovation Challenge. Don't think about it, just do it. It was a national business competition, $50,000, and elite mentorship. The kind of thing that changed everything. I spent every spare moment preparing. I rewrote my business model, collected client testimonials, practiced my pitch in classrooms after hours. I didn't aim to impress. I aimed to be undeniable. I made the finals. The day of the competition, I stood before a panel of corporate executives and told the truth. About building from nothing. About clients who couldn't afford agencies but needed real marketing to survive. About how my scarcity had become strategy. When they called my name as the winner, I didn't cry. I felt still, centered. It was the first time success didn't feel like survival. It felt earned. Kinsley ran the article the next day. Student wins National Innovation Award with 6-figure business. My name, my face, my story. I didn't send it to my parents. But Juliet did. She texted me later. They saw it. They were quiet. I think they finally get it now. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. A week later, Dean Adler asked me to meet in her office. We'd like you to give this year's commencement speech, she said, smiling. I blinked. Seriously? You've built something extraordinary. You represent who we hope our students become. I said yes before I even sat down. There'll also be special recognitions during the ceremony, she added. Just be prepared for a spotlight. That weekend, our parents hosted a graduation dinner for Juliet. I was invited, technically, but my name wasn't anywhere. Not on the banner, not in the toast, not in the photo slideshow. I said nothing. I smiled through it. Until Uncle Ray leaned over and asked, Talia, didn't I hear you won something big? Dad laughed. Oh, she's always been resourceful. Got her little projects going. Juliet's eyes narrowed. You mean the national business competition she won? The company she built while getting a 4.0 question mark? She's giving the graduation speech tomorrow and you haven't told anyone. The room went quiet. Mom blinked. She didn't tell us. Juliet folded her arms. You didn't ask. That night, Grandma Maeve called me. You ready for tomorrow, sweetheart? I looked at myself in the mirror, older, sharper, stronger. I've been ready for years. Graduation morning was bright, cloudless, and almost surreal. The university auditorium buzzed with families finding seats, programs fluttering like wings, flashes from proud parents' cameras bouncing off polished floors. I waited with the other graduates behind the curtain, cap tightened, gown pressed. Beneath it, I wore the one new dress I'd bought all year. Draped across my shoulders was a stole, custom embroidered by Grandma Maeve. She builds her own sky. Juliet found me in the lineup. You good? She whispered. I nodded. Better than good. The processional music started. We walked in alphabetical order, and I passed my parents seated near the front, Mom in a floral dress, Dad in his best blazer. Their eyes were locked on Juliet as she waved. They didn't see me. Not yet. The ceremony opened with the usual platitudes. New beginnings, limitless futures, the promise of hard work. I barely heard it. I was listening for one moment. And now, the university president said, stepping up to the podium, we invite a graduating senior whose journey represents the very soul of our institution. A pause. Then, Talia Monroe. There was a brief flicker of confusion in the audience. Then the clapping started. As I rose and walked toward the stage, I caught the moment it hit them. My parents' faces changed. Confusion first, then recognition, then a stunned blankness, a frozen attempt to smile. But it was too late. Everyone was looking, and I was already climbing the stairs. I stood at the mic, took a breath, and began. 4 years ago, I stood outside this campus, holding my acceptance letter in one hand and a list of unpaid invoices in the other. I had no funding, no backup plan, and no guarantees. But I came anyway. I talked about resilience, not just the buzzword version, but the kind that shows up when no one is clapping. I talked about building something from scratch while working 2 jobs and living on instant noodles. I talked about rejection and the fire it lit in me. I didn't name my parents. I didn't need to. The most important thing I've learned, I said, voice steady, is that the value others place on you doesn't define your worth. Their vision of you might be limited, but that's their limitation, not yours. Applause started before I even left the stage. President Adler returned to the microphone. And now, she said with a smile, some recognitions. First came the Langston Innovation Challenge. The audience clapped louder. Then the university-wide Entrepreneurship Award. Then the announcement that I'd been selected for a full-time strategy role at Whitestone Consulting, one of the country's leading firms. Then she said it. What many may not know is that Miss Monroe accomplished all this without any financial support from family. She self-funded her entire education while building a 6-figure business from the ground up. The crowd shifted. People looked around. At me, at the front row, at my parents. They sat stiffly, eyes locked forward. Trapped in a spotlight they couldn't explain away. The final announcement came like a signature on a contract. In recognition of her extraordinary determination, the university is proud to launch the Talia Monroe Scholarship for Resilient Leadership, supporting students who fight for their education despite adversity. A standing ovation followed. Juliet stood first. Grandma Maeve, beaming, squeezed my hand when I returned to my seat. I told you, she whispered. They see you now. After the ceremony, families poured out into the quad. I took photos with my mentors, hugged classmates, and posed beside Juliet, who insisted on a goofy cap-tilt shot. My parents waited nearby, awkward and stiff. Finally, Dad stepped forward. That was unexpected, he said, trying to laugh. You've been holding out on us. I looked him straight in the eye. I haven't been holding anything. You just never asked. He swallowed hard. Mom tried to recover. We're proud of you, sweetheart. Truly. Thanks, I said calmly. But I stopped needing your pride a long time ago. Juliet moved beside me, slipping her arm around my shoulders. You know, everything she said up there? You could have known it all sooner. You just chose not to see. Other relatives lingered nearby, watching, listening. The myth of our perfect family was dissolving under the weight of facts too public to ignore. Dad cleared his throat. We were actually thinking, if you need help with your new apartment deposit, we could contribute. My smile didn't reach my eyes. I appreciate the offer, but Whitestone's already covering relocation, and my signing bonus handled the rest. Mom flinched. Of course, Dad muttered. As they stepped back, Grandma Maeve took my hand. Let's go. Zoe and your team are waiting at the business school reception. Juliet hesitated, then looked at our parents. I'm going too. We left together. The reception was bright and alive with real warmth. Mentors who believed in me, peers who respected me, and the small circle that had helped me build everything from the ground up. Professor Hensley handed me a glass of champagne. "You earned every second of this," she said. Photos were taken, toasts made, and when the campus photographer asked for a family picture, I gestured to Grandma Maeve and Juliet. "This is my family." Later, as we left, I got a text from Mom. "Dinner at the house at 7? To celebrate?" I showed it to Juliet. She shrugged. "Want to go?" I thought for a long moment. "Yeah," I said. "Let's." Not for them, but for me. To walk into that room, stand tall, and remind them, I never needed to be chosen to become exceptional. They just failed to notice until the world did.